Awesome. Welcome to another episode of It Is What It Is podcast. I'm your host, Cody Kelly. Look, I appreciate my guests. I appreciate you for tuning in. And if you want to keep seeing amazing content, you got to do two things. You got to follow me on my two favorite platforms. The first one, Instagram at CVMK33, and the second one, YouTube at CV Space K. Also, I'm where all podcasts are heard. If your preference is Apple, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, however, wherever, we are there. I have an amazing episode with some amazing guests that have their own show, own podcast. I mean, they're doing their thing, Dining with Nadiva. It would be inappropriate for me to introduce them. I'm allowing them to introduce themselves, starting with Nadiva.
Hello, I'm your hostess with the mostest, Nadiva.
And I'm Tracy.
Hi, guys.
Awesome.
And we are
TNT.
This is TNT Productions. Look, I appreciate them so much. Thank you guys again. When I reached out, look, I saw the show. We're all kind of part of the same networking group. And I reached out, to Nadiva, and I was like, I'd really be interested in, featuring you all. And she acquiesced, and I really appreciate it, because sometimes you come into some interesting personalities that are a little grand and think they're bigger than what they are. And it's like, I was like, oh, it's just a show. I do what you do, So I appreciate you guys. You guys are amazing. But let's get into it. So this topic is really exploring the appropriateness of relationships. I think a lot has happened, right? Anybody that knows me knows that I'm a stickler for equality. They know that I push feminism hard. And it saddens me when I keep hearing about these allegations and these scandals and misconduct from these men of power. And I wondered, either you have to come to the reality that most men or all men are dogs, or the boundaries between the genders really have never been appropriately flushed out. A lot of norms that were accepted and acceptable in years past are no longer acceptable. So we want to get into it. We want to uncover this. So I'm going to start with Nadiva. Nadiva.
Yeah.
Can a man and a woman be friends? And then what does that friendship look like?
Well, I mean, I talk about a lot of dynamics of friendships on my show. It depends on the dynamic. I feel like boundaries are extremely important if you are in a relationship and you have friends of the opposite sex. I think having a discussion with your partner or mate about that relationship outside of your relationship with them, and really balance is also key, so that one person is not feeling like, oh my God, well, what is this? Or feeling threatened. Same thing with that friend who you of the opposite sex that you may have been friends with before you even got into that relationship, having that explanation and that understanding with them as well. But I do think balance and boundaries are very, very important, and especially the dynamics. I mean, if you have, I think we talked about in one of our episodes that's airing shortly, we talked about how, when you have, let's say, a friendship that started off as a relationship, right? It's soured, and now you've become really great friends, right? But now you've moved on and are in a relationship, but you still have that friendship relationship. You still have that friend that you had a relationship with before. So it's like, how do you now explain it to your partner? We're just friends. Although we may have dibbled and dabbled in the past, we now know that that's not working. It's
Right.
over, and we're just friends.
I like it. Dibbling and dabbling.
Dibbling and dabbling.
Nadiva brought her dibbling and dabbling. Talk to me about those boundaries. Like, if you dibbled and dabbled, right? However, whatever that, and now you're in this new space,
Right.
with this new partner, but that person might, still be semi-important, like they might go to your church. I don't know. I mean, like, there's some type of connection that is irrevocable, right? You just can't change it. Like, how do you navigate through that kind of awkward space?
I think communication is key. I think being honest is key about where you are in your friendship with that person and in your relationship. And me personally having that type of situation presently. I'm very good friends with my ex-husband, and I'm in a relationship. And just talking to the person that I'm with, saying, "Are you comfortable with this friendship? Are you comfortable with the phone calls? Are you comfortable?" Like, just really be, and that's just who I am. I'm always willing to talk about stuff, to have the difficult conversations and see where it's at. And I think that's important. But also to establishing boundaries for the person that you're still friends with, and saying, "Hey, I'm in a relationship, and I got a new boundary. Like, maybe you can't call me every day." You know what I mean? It's just inappropriate. It doesn't look well. It doesn't feel good to my partner. And I want to respect him and his feelings and not do that. So I think communication is what it's all about. And I'm a big promoter of communicating. And what does that look like for people? Communication is talking about how you feel, how they feel, and setting the boundary. Like, you can't call me every day. Maybe you could call me once a week or once a month and check in and say hi and catch up. Maybe we can't do dinner anymore, right? Like, maybe it's just a check-in. I think it all depends on, like, what Nadia was saying. I'm gonna refer back to that. What's the situation? What's the scenario? What's the dynamic of the relationship?
I like that, Tracy. Dynamic of the relationship. I think you and Nadiva hit on the head. So, Tasha, I'm throwing this to you because, Tasha, you're married, correct? Yes, right. So, your dynamic in the relationship is a little different, right? So, let's say your partner, comes to you and is like, "Hey, we went to college together. When I played, she was there when I crossed over. And I've known her for 15 plus years, and I get it. We've been together, but she's coming to town. Can I see her? Talk to us about, because when you're married, it adds another layer of complexity, right? It does. So talk to us about that complexity.
It all goes back to everything the lady said previously. It's about the dynamics of the relationship. It's about communication. It's about being honest with your partner, but being honest with yourself too. And it's about transparency. My husband served in the military. He retired about 5-6 years ago, but he served in the military with everyone. So he had made friends with men, with women over the years. He's done several deployments. So people have come and gone. And it's not out of the ordinary for him to say, "Hey, you remember so-and-so? She and I served together in Kuwait. Well, she's going to be in town. We want to get up for dinner." The first thing he does, he's like, "Do you want to come? I would love for us all to go." He always includes me. I want us to all sit down. I want you to get to know her. And if I'm available, I'll go. If I'm not available, then he'll go. But it's really just a matter of him being transparent. He tells me, or your partner should inform you of how often they're talking to that person. What are they talking about? Are there some subjects that are off limits? Yeah. That it's all about setting those boundaries. Yes, she's my friend, or yes, he's my friend, but I don't talk about you and me to him, or not that I don't talk about you and me to him, but like I don't talk about the intimacies of our relationship with him. I want them to know each other. I want them, and he wants me to know his friends. So it's really just a matter of keeping us included. And when a problem arises, you see something that you don't like, you speak on it. You're honest about it. Don't try to be that person that's like, "No, I'm cool with it. I'm cool. I'm secure."
Right.
I'm cool. And then you see the dynamics between the two of them. You're like, "But wait, hold up. Oh, no, I'm still cool. But wait." You have to be honest. Like, right. I felt some way. Y'all was sitting there having this conversation. You were talking about something I know nothing about. So I kind of just sat being an observer. I didn't feel like I was a part of it.
Right.
You have to continue to keep your partner involved.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
I've also noticed like this, like you've ever heard of those people that hire a nanny, right? And then the husband runs off with a nanny. So nowadays, when women look for nannies, they making sure they're like, 85 and up, and their name is Olga with a big old mole right here,
Exactly.
just to establish that boundary.
I get it. I get it. That makes sense. Well, that's interesting. You talk about including the other one, and I get it because like if you're going out to eat and they're just laughing at these jokes, and it's like that's not even funny. Hey, you gonna be like, that person laughed at all your jokes. Tasha, how long does it take to get to that point? Because I think you talk about being honest with yourself. I think it's misleading to think that you just get there, like it just naturally, organically happens, right? I think there's a process to that point when it's like, oh, okay, you know what I'm saying? There's a build up. How long was that process for you?
It depends on the friendship. There are sometimes when you can walk into a relationship with someone and you've been friends with someone of the opposite sex for years. Coming into that relationship, that person has always been there. So if that person makes you feel comfortable from the onset, that process can be really short. But if it's a matter of someone new coming into the relationship, I work with this person, or I did a show with this person and I want to hang out with this person. Now it's like, all right, well, I'm gonna need to know some things. It's not something that happens overnight. If you're secure in your relationship, like really secure in your relationship, then for each person it's different. I may be secure in my relationship with my husband to the point where I'm not looking at anybody else sideways. It might take me a couple years to get there. Or I might walk into that relationship already secure because I knew my husband before we started dating. We were friends first. So there were a lot of people in his life I already knew. Mm-hmm. And they knew me. So, in certain situations, it really wasn't a thing. Like, okay, cool. And then in other situations, it was like, oh yeah, like I said, she works in dispatch and everybody's going out for dinner and for drinks. And I'm like, oh yeah, where y'all going? I'm coming.
I like it. Makes sense.
Well, you going? I'm coming, right? So it depends on the couple. It depends on the two people, and it depends on their dynamic.
It's true.
And the friend is the friend.
Go ahead.
If the friend is respectful. I had a situation when I was married with my husband, and he had a friend that was his friend from back in his country, and she moved here. And so they would talk on the phone. And whenever they were talking on the phone, he'd include me. Hey, talk to her. She wants to say hi, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay. And we built this relationship over, I don't know, maybe a year or two. And then we decided that we were going to take our families together, her husband and her kids, and me and my husband and our kids on vacation. Oh. And so now I'm meeting her for the first time face to face. And we're talking and we go to stay at their house, right? And so while the men went out to get, drinks or whatever and come back, while I'm sitting in the kitchen with her, she looks at me and she goes, I've always loved him. And I'm like, what? Wait, you always loved him. And I'm thinking to myself, was there a need for her to announce that? Because as friends, there's some love there, right?
Right.
But you didn't need to announce it because I got that from the onset that, there was love there. You guys have maintained this friendship over the years. Now I'm feeling some kind of way. Like this is more than just a friendship. This lady has some underlying feelings for my husband that she's trying to let me know, and I'm not feeling comfortable. And now I'm in her house and I'm saying, this is not going to be good. And over the vacation, I realized that really she does have feelings for him. And I had to check him and say, hey, did you see her do this? And the last resort for me was when we were out at dinner, and she went to stick her fork in his plate and share food. That's what it had to do. Like at that point, right? Yeah, I went there, Tasha. I did. So that friendship had to end because we were done.
I'm sure my wife would have cussed her and me out for some bullshit like that. I don't even.
I did a little bit of that.
Real. She would have drawn back enough.
Well, I said out loud for her to hear so she can understand where we're at with this. But that was a friendship that I thought was genuinely just a friendship. She's married with children. He's married with children, but she had some feelings that she was, suppressing, I guess,
Yeah.
and decided she let me know. And I was like, whoa. And she did it in a way that you was like questioning, like, okay, what is she saying right now to me? But we're not stupid. We're women. We know, when somebody is liking somebody or there's some feelings there other than just a platonic friendship or genuine just friendship. Just I just love him. He's a great person. That wasn't it. So sometimes you got to be careful.
See, and that's what I'm saying. It's all about being able to recognize those dynamics.
Right.
And seeing how people interact with one another. There's nothing more telling than seeing someone's body language.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Also, too, I feel that, like, because I know for me personally, if I know that I'm being introduced to my boyfriend's friend who happens to be a female, my first thing in my mind is like, well, what she look like? Because if she's like cacao, then by yourselves may not be a go with me. Because I just find that, look, if I'm looking, then I know you looking. That's how I feel. All right. Look, I can admire a beautiful woman all day.
Yeah.
But if she's coming into the picture bombshell, looking like Pamela Anderson, talk about, yeah, me and your husband are going out for dinner, or me and your man are gonna go out for dinner. I'm like, wait a minute, you gonna FaceTime me? Like, what's going on?
That's the opposite end of that. Even being married, where one of my best friends is a guy. It just so happens he's my daughter's godfather, and we're all friends. My husband and I, we're all friends. Yeah. But he's dated women who we've gone out, even when I'm with my husband, feel some way because of the dynamics between, like, we've had to tone down the stupidity that can be our friendship sometimes so that people don't feel left out. But even from just the introduction, you get it, when someone isn't feeling you. Right. So sometimes that's the introduction. Sometimes you feel a vibe. And even my husband, who sometimes is not the most keen on people, will be like, did you pick up that shade? I'm like, I did. What's that? Because she has nothing to worry about.
Right.
Oh, you.
Right.
But so you try to make that person, being on the other end of it, being the friend that the girlfriend feels some way about. I always go out of my way to try to make them feel included. Sometimes I'll even ignore the boyfriend and spend all of the evening just focused on that person so that they don't feel like I'm trying to encroach on an area that's not for me.
I like it. I got one for Nadiva. Let's switch focus to the overstepping of boundaries, the inappropriateness of it, right? It seems like every time, at least for the last 5 years, you think of the Me Too movement, and you keep hearing these stories of women that have been violated in whatever sphere, in the workplace and religious centers, really in every facet of life. Talk to us, like, as a woman, Nadiva, like, in this question, I'm gonna start with you. What, I don't know. I'm a man. I don't know. I don't know what it's like to be one. I can never always say, a grasshopper shouldn't speak for an ant, and an ant shouldn't speak for a grasshopper. They all have their voice, right? So, what is that like the warning signs, right? Because there's buildup. I just, obviously there is the overreach that is so egregious, right? That, everybody can see it and say that. But before that, I always feel like there's a buildup that just doesn't get addressed. So when the overreach happens, now it's at this pivotal point, and if you want to share an experience, like what is that? What are those steps that men need to just be aware not to do?
Well, I mean, I'm actually in a situation now where I have a friend who is just a friend. And, although I know, look, I ain't the most beautiful woman, but I know that, I'm an attractive woman who's single and he's single. But if I'm not, I'm cool with being friends with the opposite sex. and it be just platonic, right? But given that, you know, uh, men might be attracted to me, I always try to make sure I'm establishing that boundary early on. But there are times when I can tell it's getting difficult for them. So, like for instance, if I'm, you know, I like to dress. I like, you know, I'm always done up. My, you know, face is done, and if we happen to go out and you're staring at me the whole night like a rotisserie chicken, you know, just looking at the just drippings off of me, like I'm just like, hold on, wait a minute, like, you know, I think conversation. If I see the conversation is turning a little bit left, like you're constantly, oh my God, you're so beautiful, girl, you fine. Oh my God, da 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 da. I'm like, hold up, where's that coming from? I also feel like just little gestures sometimes can give men away and women away, you know. But I think it's definitely you looking for signs in conversation, looking for signs in their disposition and their demeanor. When you see that they're like one night we were watching a movie together, and then all of a sudden I said something that was touching to him during the movie, and he put his hand on my hand, and I was like, "What's that? What's that there? What's that? You know, this is platonic, right? This ain't no, don't do that. Don't do that. You know." So it's like little things like that. But I definitely try to check them. And if I feel like things are becoming difficult for them, then sometimes I'll have that discussion and back away a little bit. Um, because it is what it is. I mean, I'm a single woman, but I do enjoy being around men, you know, and being in their company. But I don't feel like as though you can't have a platonic relationship or a platonic friendship with someone as long as they honor the friendship, as long as they respect you as a woman and respect your boundaries as a woman. Yeah, there have been plenty of times where I've encountered men that have overstepped that boundary and they've never overstepped it again. Um, because you gotta have that, you know, that tough love sometimes.
Or
But
you just cut it off.
or you just cut it off, which I've done as well too. I don't have um I don't usually stay friends with men that I've had relationships with. Once it's done, it's done. So if we start off as a friend and we get into a relationship, 9 times out of 10, if it doesn't work, that friendship
It makes sense. It makes sense. Tracy, talk to us about, because Nadiva talked about it at first. I think on a nominal level, it starts off just in the form of communication, right? And from this, it evolves into something unwanted and drastic. That disposition, like when it switches, right? Is it so so pointed that you could be like, okay, look, you're going too far, you know, there's, you know, that, you know, part of the conversation we can't engage in, you know, and the reason why I ask is because I think Hollywood is misleading. You know, I think movies, and I love all of Tyler Perry's, you know, work. I think he's iconic. I think his stuff is exaggerated, right? Like, you know, movies like Acrimony and stuff, you know, that's a farce on a lot of just different types of relationships and the scale of it. So what is that cue? Like, what is that like, hey, you know, like, don't. What is that
Right.
cue?
Like even in like say a first date and you go out with somebody and clearly we are just getting to know each other, right? So I'm not expecting you to be grabbing on me, touching me inappropriately. And when and it has happened, and at that very moment, you're supposed to say something. I think too many people, it happens and they make excuses for it or too afraid to say something for whatever reason. Maybe they're in a work relationship and scared of losing their job or what someone's going to say, right? Or, you know, or just they're not outspoken enough to address it. So they take it home and it builds, and then someone else says something. And this is how the Me Too movement started, right? Someone else says something, and you know it happened to you too. And now that person gives you a voice because you didn't have one before, but now you see it, and then you piggyback off of that. And I think that you should say something when you're being violated from the start. you should always say something. You should always have a voice to let people know that I've been violated, or I feel uncomfortable. I don't like how you look at me. I don't like how you talk to me. Please don't touch me. I think those are things that we as people, and especially as women, we need to say it from the start, from the onstart. When you see it happening, we need to address it immediately. And we don't.
No, that's well said. Well said.
I don't think
Josh,
it's always, I don't think it's always that easy. For some people, I can myself to be really outspoken, as the ladies will tell you. I don't shy away from speaking my mind, but having been in a situation where a coworker accosted me at work, in the moment, I was so shell shocked that I was like a deer stuck in headlights. I didn't really know how to move at that moment. I did share my story with a fellow coworker who encouraged me to go to HR, but I was a woman working in a predominantly male environment. I didn't know how that was going to be received. He had a lot of clout in the company. He was in the boss's ear. So there were things that sort of kept me from pursuing it further, or even pursuing it at all. But telling a fellow coworker made me feel a little safer. I was never alone with that person again. Eventually, I confronted that person, but in the moment when it was all happening, I was scared. I froze in terror, and then once everything had happened, I needed time to process what had happened, because I was caught off guard at the aggressiveness of it. I wasn't caught off guard that it happened, because he had been saying things that had made me feel uneasy. But once we were alone in my office, it's not always as easy as speaking up in the moment. You want to have that strength. You want to be able to be that person to be like, hey, whoa, slow down, pump the brakes. What was that? Don't do that. Don't touch me. Don't do that. But unless you're
not that easy. I know. Been there.
I find it's easier for me to do it for someone else, ironically, than it is for me to do it for myself.
You know what's so funny is the question I was going to pose to you and talk about how God works was, Tasha, have you ever felt pressure from a man, or overstepping his boundary? That's interesting that you shared that. What do you think is missing, right? Then again, I'm honest about my own ignorance. I've never have felt, I've never been forced or, anything. So when that happens, like you said, it was like a deer caught in headlights. Also the understanding, because there is a lack of diversity traditionally with a lot of organizations, and the power dynamic is uneven, right? You think of your C-level execs and hires is pretty much men, and
right.
And you're dealing with predominantly white males, so there's a lack even of ethnic and racial, cultural diversity even within that. So what is needed? Because it seems like it's not HR, because if it was just HR, then all this stuff wouldn't be happening, right? So what is that missing? Is it just because nobody looks like you, right? Because you don't see yourself, and because one demographic has so much autonomy and power that just out of sheer numbers, it's intimidating?
Right. I think accountability is missing. When you think about the Harvey Weinsteins, the Matt Lauers, the Governor Cuomo's, who right now is under investigation, so nothing has has been set in stone, but the allegation, it's coming from the head. And Harvey Weinstein, who does Harvey Weinstein answer to? He's the head of the company. I mean, everybody answers to somebody, but getting to the person he answers to is a much harder task than just going to HR. I think accountability is missing. I think compassion is missing, especially because it's men for the most part who run these companies, who are the head of these organizations. So to get to the head, sometimes you need to be a little shrewd, and not that shrewdness negates compassion, but it's harder to understand something when you're not a victim of it. It's easier to say the woulda, coulda, shouldas if you're not walking in those shoes. Women oftentimes aren't believed for whatever reason, either because there was someone before them who cried wolf, or just ignorance, like you said, just sheer ignorance. I think accountability, understanding, all those things have to come into play when you're dealing with the power struggle and a power dynamic that makes a woman less than.
Mm-hmm. And I truly believe that, because I've been in positions where people have abused their title and their position by being inappropriate, and they've used their position to do that, which I think is horrible. But this, for some reason, makes me think back through history. As Black women, we have been violated through rape from masters, even incestual things. We through history, it has happened to us, and we have. I think nowadays it's kind of expected for us when it happens, because we're Black. We got to be strong women. We got to bear.
Yeah.
We got to bear the butt and keep it moving. And then things start to happen emotionally, whatever. But I think that because of the history of it, it's like we're expected to deal with it. We're expected to have that tough skin. I mean, I can go through a personal story where I felt completely violated by somebody. But guess what? I had to put my bootstraps on and keep it moving. I had my accountability because I had my girlfriends. I was able to bounce it off of them and tell them exactly what happened. However, it was extremely taxing on me mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, but I knew that I had to keep moving. I knew I could not let what had happened keep me back from the greatness that I know that I've been called to be. So I think it's in history, you know, as Black women, this has been a very, very difficult subject for us to talk about. But I'm glad that we're going through these. We're evolving as women. We're evolving as humans, and as we grow, we're starting to find out that there are Harvey Weinsteins out there. There are R. Kellys out there. There are Bill Cosby's out there. And now is the time for us to step up and say, enough is enough. Enough is enough.
The Me Too movement was started by Black women because our voices have been silenced for so long.
That's the thing too, though. But where's the consequence? I understand about the accountability, but you also feel sometimes like I'm gonna say something and nothing's gonna happen, and they're gonna turn it around and make me look like, oh well, she had 5 boyfriends before, and she used to hang out at the bar. Like they're gonna start attacking your character, and that didn't have anything. That never gave you the right to touch me inappropriately or violate me. It never gave you the right. It doesn't matter what boyfriend I had or what's my situation over there. You still can't. That doesn't give you the right to touch me inappropriately or do or to violate me. I think that there's also no consequence, and the consequence is like the victim. You become,
it's the victim.
Yeah, it is. And it's like you say something and then you suffer even more for talking. So you're like, never mind, I'm just gonna pull out my straps and keep it moving and put it behind me. And it does mess with you emotionally. It does. And it's taxing and it's exhausting. And talking and getting it out helps. And that's why you have your girlfriends and your family that you feel you should talk to. And when I was saying you need to say something and speak up, Tasha, definitely. I've also had a situation where I had a plumber that was my plumber for years, and called me downstairs and said, hey, I need something. And I gave him whatever he needed, and I went to walk away, and he smacks me on my behind. And you guys know me. I'm very outspoken. I said nothing. I just kept walking and walked upstairs to my bedroom, closed the door, and started crying.
Yeah.
I didn't tell my husband. I just said to him, you know what? We don't need to use that plumb anymore. And if we do, can you just be home whenever he comes? He was like, yeah, I could be home. He didn't really think about it. And so the third time that I said to him, no, I don't want, I can't be with the plumber. Can you do it? And he said, what happened? And
Yeah.
I finally told him, and it was like a year later. And he's like, why didn't you say something? And I'm like, because I was so taken off guard. It was somebody that was like a grandfather to me, somebody that I trusted, somebody that I I left in the house fixing something with my children. Had he touched my children, it was just so much that it was overwhelming. And I didn't say something for a long time because I didn't know how to. I didn't know where to start.
Yeah.
And I think that's also conditioned through our people as well. So don't talk,
Yeah,
don't
to
tell.
be quiet. Yeah,
Yeah, don't talk, don't tell. If your man's
right.
cheating on you, you can't say nothing. You know,
Don't
don't
say
approach
like
him. If
yourself.
somebody violates you or takes advantage of you, don't say anything.
Yeah, just be quiet.
And I
Yeah.
think it's because of also the lack of education as far as mental health is concerned in the Black community as well. Women unfortunately don't know that there are other outlets aside from going to your girlfriends or going to a neighbor or going to whoever. There are therapy. There's therapy for things like that, and that we don't have to be silent about this anymore. I don't know how we were conditioned. I guess we were conditioned back in slave days. You can't tell the masses raping you. And it's just
It
trickled
didn't
down
matter.
from generation to generation to generation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
even in families of incest and stuff like that, they didn't. They didn't. You was be quiet. That didn't happen. Act like that didn't happen. And that's part of the problem. And I'm so happy we're talking now.
Yeah,
Like
because
it is.
it puts men on notice now that because they have also been conditioned to be able to do these things and get away with it, right?
Absolutely.
Now we're coming to a world where, nah, bruh, you ain't getting away with that now
But
because
that
women are being vocal and we're speaking up and speaking out.
but that to me goes back to the accountability. It's no different than blaming the victim of rape because of what she wore. You must have done something. You must have left an opening. You must have done something that made that person feel like it was okay to behave that way, rather than turning it inward and saying, no, he's just a jerk. Or,
Hmm.
his ego, he needed his ego stroked. He's used to getting his way because of his position in power. And he's not used to having to be accountable to anybody. He's used to just kind of doing whatever he wants to do. So this is the way he behaves.
Hmm. And some men even will wait till a woman is in her most vulnerable state. So like let's say for instance, she's had a little bit too much to drink, and that's like for some men that's their go-to moment. Or let's say you guys happen to just be chilling and she happens to fall asleep. You know how many men have tried to take advantage of women like that? But
Yeah.
that's not, to me, that's not a woman giving you an invitation. You know,
Yeah.
that's
Right.
not a woman giving you an invitation to touch her, to speak a feeling or nothing. But men will wait for those vulnerable moments, and then what? It's just, so I'm happy. I'm happy that
Happy we're
um
talking.
yes, that women are becoming accountable for one another, that we're no longer staying silent, because men and women, because I mean it's not just men. There are women that are out there too that are taking advantage of men. There are men that are women are building relationships with men just to try to get in their pants.
Yeah.
So it happens on both sides. It does.
Yeah. I just think there has to be some fear of a consequence. My daughter is 17. She's starting to date. My husband's been very clear that anybody who knocks on the door to pick her up, remember what you do to her, I do to you.
Yeah.
And my husband's crazy. So people don't.
Right. Got to be a consequence.
Yeah, there's got
Right?
to be a consequence.
Got to be fear of a consequence.
Yeah, you make my little girl cry, I'm gonna make you cry. Like, you just there has to
Hmm.
be fear of what you reaping, what you sow.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And I think
What?
women also need to be accountable too for and be responsible to not put themselves in situations as well. Like, if you getting sleepy, take your behind home. Don't go lay in his bed
Or on this couch. Go
or
home.
on his couch. You getting tired, go home. Um, Limit yourself on how many glasses of wine you might have in company, so you're
What?
not in that vulnerable position.
No, I first of all thank you all uh, for your transparency and vulnerability. For real. I appreciate all of you for just truth to power. So what, and Tracy, I'll start with you. What do women need from men? We talk about this accountability aspect, and some might argue we have that. We have a judicial system, right? Right. And if you're a person of color, you already have your predisposition against that judicial system, right? So, but we have that. We have laws. We have things already in place. Well, here's the United States, right? So, what do women need from us? Because it seems like this trust has been broken in so many different ways, in so many different forms, and so many different variables. And we're talking now about it, but are we repairing the breach, right? And I think obviously there's steps to it. And the dialogue is absolutely essential to begin the healing process. But I don't think men get it, right? I don't think as a whole it's even discussed. It's still kind of like, that's just an isolated incident, right? It's not like, no, this is probably the norm, and what you think is going on is an isolated reality, right? So Tracy, I'll begin with you. What do men need to provide to their fellow female counterparts, their sisters?
We need your support, Cody. We need you guys to support us. We need you to hear us. When we say it, don't just brush it off like, oh, this is an isolated incident. We need you to support us in the way that you're hearing us and saying, how can I help you through this more? Or maybe your support in talking to your brothers and letting them know, because you may get it, right? And he doesn't. And when you guys are sitting together and having those men moments, and then bring it to the forefront for those people as well, for your brothers, your cousins, your uncles, your friends, because sometimes coming from us, it's like, they're just whining again. Here they go nagging. They talking. They in there. Where you're emotional. Is it that time of the month that you just feeling yourself or whatever? We always get brushed off that we're emotional or whatever. It's not that. It's communication and your support. We need it.
Tasha.
Yes. I think understanding, again, holding your fellow brother accountable, checking the ego. That ego can be a killer. And some have to be able to check that ego and be okay with hearing no. And like Tracy said, just be supportive. If someone is trusting you enough to come to you and share something with you that is personal and making themselves vulnerable and they're opening up to you, help them create a support network so that they feel safe in coming to you and sharing with you. And be open-minded. Don't be quick to judge. Get all the facts. But, let your sisters know that you're there to hold them up.
Nadiva.
Well, what I feel is very important is respect and honor. Respect and honoring a woman. When I think of a woman, I think of Proverbs 31 and the description of a woman. And I feel like, if men are in tune with themselves, if men have some type of a relationship with their mother, because I think it also falls on that as well. How do they view women? And that's based on how they were raised. Did they have a healthy mother figure in their life? Because that definitely lends into how they'll be treating women in their personal lives, in their relationships. So I feel like if a man respects and honors his mother, then that would definitely go a long way for a woman in his life. And but I think that also what's key is communication. That we don't need, as women and as men, we don't need to feel like, oh my God, I can't talk, or oh my God, I have to be silent. No, I feel like we need to start talking. I think we should start communicating and being extremely open and transparent with these subjects and with one another. And if you feel someone was out of pocket or stepped out of line, no longer be silent about it. You know, there are things that have been set in place now as far as consequences are concerned. Um, and I think the ultimate wrath you'll get is from God. You step out of line, right? So, with that being said, yeah, I would say honoring and respecting one another, and communicating and no longer being silent, and having accountability partners as well.
I love it. I want to thank my guests. They have been amazing. They've shared their personal stories, and I'm sure, you know, when they signed up for this, that was probably not part of it. But I want to thank Nadiva, Tracy, Tasha, TNT Production. They have been absolutely amazing. Guys, where can they connect with you? What are you doing? Nadiva, where can they follow you? Tracy, where can they follow you? Tasha, where can they follow you, connect with you, support you?
Well, our major platform right now is on YouTube. So follow us at Dining with Nadiva on YouTube. And we're also on all of the audio platforms. So you can find us on iHeart, Apple, Spotify. And we have just acquired our first network. So we will now you can see us on Roku at the Inspired Living Network. And we're very excited about that. And we will be premiering on the network April 7th at 7 p.m. And we will be on that network every Wednesday at 7 p.m. So check us out there. Check us out on YouTube and all of the audio platforms.
Yes.
I love it. Guys, support them. They are amazing. I always say this, get support. And the cool thing about subscribing to the YouTube channel, following them on Instagram is simply, it's free. It takes nothing. And when you do that, it allows people to get into them and shows them, hey, we support you. We love you. And you know how you want to keep supporting this? Subscribe to the YouTube page at YouTube at CV Space K. My guests have been amazing. These are the leaders, not of tomorrow, but of today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Until next time, guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Hey, what's up, everybody? You like what you saw? Were you entertained? Were you informed? We want to keep seeing amazing content. Subscribe at the link below. YouTube, CV Space K. You connect where all podcasts are streaming. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Anchor. Connect with me